Chapter 6. The Burnings and the Message. The bed spring fountain subsided, and we were set on our feet. I looked over at Cameron and knew instinctively that we would be together for the rest of the journey. But I had to go through some personal things on my own first and strengthen my relationship with Jesus. Jesus, Lion, and Shadow walked out from the trees. I went quickly to greet them and hug them all. I picked up Shadow, and she licked my face lovingly. I want to stay in this magical forest forever, singing with nature and bouncing in the springs, I said excitedly. Jesus laughed. There will be more rest stops along the way. Stay alert for the rest stop signs. Lion spoke in a low purr. It is time when kings and queens go off to war. The purr grew to a thunderous, deafening roar. The day grew dark and menacing, and lightning flashed from his jaw, lighting up the forest. We could see a great war between the hosts of heaven and the armies of Satan, raging in the flashes of light. It seemed close around us, yet far away in a dimension of the heavens we could not reach. Shadow turned to us. Time for the last cleansing, the burning. I grimaced. I was not sure I liked the sound of that. Cameron immediately walked over to Lion with his hand outstretched and stood in front of Lion's eyes, which were now flames of fire. Cameron began to cry huge rivers of tears, and then his voice blathered out, "I need you, Father." He burbled that over and over as sparks flashed from his own eyes and mixed with his tears. Lion began to manifest fire in his beautiful fur. I thought how sad it was not to be able to bury my face in his fur now. It would surely char my skin beyond repair. Then I watched as his burning fur beckoned Cameron in a different way than it had beckoned me in the waiting room, which seemed like many years ago. Cameron reached out and touched Lion's flaming mane. Immediately his hand melted into the mane and was consumed. I screamed! Next his whole arm went in, and it too was consumed. It was as if he was being pulled into the inferno of fur. He continued to go in until his head and upper body were consumed. Then he was gone, burned into Lion. Only his boots were left smoking on the forest floor. I stood in front of Lion, paralyzed with a new, unfamiliar fear. Could this be the true fear of the Lord? It was actually thrilling me deep down. He opened his mouth and outspilled Cameron like a newborn baby. Only he was glowing, spirit man pulsing with power. Nothing was left of his normal appearance. His carnal nature had been incinerated in Lion's all-consuming character. Then it was my turn. Before I could think about this new fear, I dived straight into Lion's open mouth. Immediately I was rolling in burning awe beyond dread. I felt pain and wonder, but it didn't hurt. It only made me curious and hungry, wanting more of the burning, the truth of his character burning through me, eating me, swallowing me. I felt myself simmering inside of him, tumbling in his oven body. I knew we needed this for the next phase of our journey. I heard a high-pitched scream. I realized it was coming from me. I came out through his eyes, a smoky, trailing mist forming at my place beside my husband, fully spirit. We looked at each other with eyes pulsating from electrified new bodies. Our gaze was like nothing we had ever experienced, but had always waited for, like something we knew was there, but could not really put our finger on, until suddenly it was happening, and our hearts were open in a whole new way. It was a look of all-knowing, infinite love that cannot be made to happen by any earthly qualities. Physically, we began to change back into our normal forms, but something powerful stayed illuminated just beneath our skin. We were throbbing. "I feel like I'm wrapped in a warm embrace," I whispered. "As do I," Cameron responded. "It's the essence of the nature of God, pure love." The air around us seemed to be charged with spiritual authority, power, and glory. Cameron looked at Lion, Jesus and shadow, and then back at me again with that deep love, and sang out strong, "Come away with me, my love." He sang on from the Song of Solomon. "Rise, awaken, fair leading light. The winter is past and the rain is gone. The flowers are here, singing time upon us. Voice of the dove lifts up, lifts up. Figs are green, vines in bloom, emitting out their crisp perfume. Look at me, sing to me, as together we take the foxes that spoil the blossom, to spoil no more, to ruin no more, the love that we adore. It is the time when kings and queens go off to war. Lyon roared again, in a softer voice this time. Jesus in shadow waited. It was nearing dusk, and the air was falling asleep around us, whispering. Tiny, fairy-like angels came, gathering new, lightweight cloaks for us, and lay them across our shoulders. I had a fleeting thought that this was my third cloak. It was still brown on the outside, but a light green color on the reverse side. It was almost transparent material, like silk chiffon, only you could not see through it. When I touched it, it shivered as if it were alive. It was twice the width of my old one and still touched my ankles, giving me a welcome new feeling of safety. Cameron picked me up in his arms and began walking, carrying me like a bride across the threshold of the forest clearing. When we looked in each other's eyes, we had a knowing connection, filled with a new, intense love and confidence. Cameron was towering in the strength and power of our God. I looked down at his huge feet. As he moved forward, each step lit up with radiant light. At first, I thought it was the path, but then I realized as his feet hit the path, they both lit up, his shoes and the path. It was our blue brick road, only it was not moving like before. The path was shooting light up his pant leg as well. It was pulsing with a bright blue glow, growing with each step outward on the path and up his legs. The path itself was very narrow, but the light helped us stay on track as night closed in. Nature and the animals surrounded us as we moved forward and greeted us as we passed by. They spoke blessings and scriptures in English, Farsi, and many other languages. The trees and flowers joined in with many tongues. It was a captivating chorus of nature's songs and sounds. A deer stepped forward and said very clearly, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path." Creation all around us began to chant this over and over. Cameron put me down, and we joined in as we walked on down the blue brick road. We chanted to the cadence of Lions and Tigers and Bears, oh my, like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. We all repeated it together in perfect rhythm. Cameron's shoes and legs continued glowing as the good news lit everything up brighter and brighter, and now mine were radiant too. The path was shining like a lit midnight trail in the approaching darkness. Suddenly, a giant angel loomed over us holding a book. He looked like a young man with red hair and freckles, but gave the impression he was old. His arms were very thick and strange-looking. Without any hesitation, he began to speak. It's time to turn a new page. A new page is turning in spiritual history as it turns in your lives. Eat the living canonized word before the famine comes. The things you are writing now will be for generations to come. Yours will be faithful pens of ready writers. Now turn. He blew on the pages and they turned, releasing a golden dust into our faces. We felt it permeate our minds. He tore out some of the thin pages and gave them to us to eat. They melted on our tongues like communion wafers. He tucked the book into his jacket pocket, took his jacket off, wrapped it around his waist, and lifted up his arms. He was wearing a t-shirt, and now we could see why his arms were so odd. Rows of feathers were attached all around them. The feathers could close themselves and wrap around his arms, making them look bulky under his jacket. Now they were whirring fast like a hummingbird's wings, emitting a melody. He smiled as he rose and hung there for a second, and then he flew away like a streak of lightning, flying on the song of his wings. In that moment, another man appeared. "John!" I explained. It was the writer of the book of Revelation and one of Jesus' best friends. I had met him in a vision before, and he had given me an ancient pen. "Stay on the path where your pen guides you. The holy highway is in the ink. The ink will light the way," John said. He gave us new pens with ink made of light. John reached out a finger and wrote in the air. The words and sentences trailed like streaks of light and hung for a moment before melting away. "Go in faith. The Lord is with you. The strength of the Lord is with you in times of trouble. The joy of the Lord is with you always." Then he said, "Your new pens will be useful weapons. You will know when to use them." He bowed his head and disappeared. I took my pen and waved it in the air. It wrote in letters of light, like a sparkler, only the words stayed longer. I wrote, "Thank you, Father." It hung like a Christmas decoration for several moments and slowly dissolved. "I wish I could have talked to him," I said. "I have so many questions." "Perhaps another time," said Cameron, as he put the precious pen in his pocket. I did the same. Suddenly, my beautiful horse flew in and landed in front of us. "Spirit!" I cried out in happiness. "Cameron, this is my awesome horse. You will not believe—" I was cut off as another very majestic horse landed right next to Spirit, startling me as I stepped back. "Oh, I would believe," said Cameron. I knew immediately the other horse belonged to Cameron. He was huge, and his coat was shining blue-black. "What is your name?" I asked the great beast a bit nervously. "Jade," Cameron said as he walked over and put his hand to Jade's mouth in a familiar gesture. "Good to see you again, my old friend." Jade nodded and rubbed up against Cameron, almost knocking him over. "Look at our clothes and weapons," Cameron said. They had changed again into armor under our new cloaks. It was a very special thin armor, like a second skin. I knew instinctively it was the manifestation of the Ephesians' armor. By believing in it and repeating it in our lives, it had now become our second skin. Our helmets looked like those of a welder with a red cross etched into the shield. I reached up to open Cameron's eye shield for fun, and the whole helmet disappeared. We had invisible helmets. I opened my shield and leaned my head forward to Cameron. He knocked on the helmet that was not there. I knocked on his about 3 inches from his face. We could close the shields if we wanted our helmets to be seen. I now had my sword in a sheath on my back. It had a new double edge, still bent with 6 green leaves on the branch-like handle. I had a new knife on my left side with a gold curved blade and an ivory grip with finger indentions perfectly fit to mine. It was in a red leather holster with SY for JC etched into it. I also had a very old shofar hanging over the front of my shoulder. I looked over Cameron's weapons. He had the longest sword I had ever seen in a sheath on his right side that dragged the ground when he walked. Over his left shoulder was a golden bow with a thick oxgut string. The quiver was strapped to his back. On his left side was an odd-looking gun, very old, the long, thin barrel sticking out through the worn holster and touching his knee, shining silver as if recently polished. It felt as if all the weapons were alive as they vibrated around us, waiting for the call to battle. Cameron and I nodded to one another and mounted. Shadow appeared and jumped up into my lap, always with us. Our horses, Jade and Spirit, spoke to one another in an ancient human language, which at this point was no surprise. We laughed with confidence as they reared up side by side and plunged into the sky. In an instant, we were soaring through the heavens at an incredible speed. It felt as if we took a turn downward at some point beyond human time. And then I spotted a planet through the scattered clouds. "Earth," I said. "Earth," Cameron repeated. "Earth," said Shadow softly. Cameron and I both pointed to the outline of a purple-colored ridge of mountains. We knew this was our destination as our horses headed straight for one of the peaks. "For purple mountains' majesty," I sang as we landed on the peak in America.